Let's talk about something that's very important to progressive media and media in general. The Sinclair Group they actually have bought Tribune Media. This is a major deal in terms of news broadcasting and conglomerates. The Sinclair Broadcast Group has set a $3.9 billion cash and stock agreement to acquire Tribune Media. This deal is going to bring Sinclair more than 200 television stations, and it's going to put 200 television stations underneath one entity. This is a major deal. The Sinclair Group, a little bit background on the Sinclair Group. It is a conservative-leaning organization. It is so conservative that they actually had conversations with Jared Kushner during the election that led to favorable coverage of Donald Trump. This is the same group that ran back in 2004. They aired a documentary critical of John Kerry. They ran a special in 2012 critical of President Obama for his handling of the economy and the Obamacare, as well as in Benghazi. So this is a conservative organization with a conservative agenda, gobbling up 200 stations, primarily local stations. And you begin to ask yourself the question, if it's local stations, how partisan can they actually be? And let me answer that by juxtaposing an offer that they got from Fox News. Fox made an effort to snatch away the deal from underneath Sinclair, but they came in too late and they could not get it. Had Fox News gotten this, they currently own about 37% reach into major markets. 37%, they would have owned more than Nexstar and CBS. So if Fox News had gotten this and they got access to all these stations, they would have been able to forward their conservative agenda even further. I bring that up because the question is, how much damage can local stations actually do to the national conversation when in the national conversation, the local stations tend to not present commentary, politically partisan commentary in such a direct fashion. The thing here that's important to realize about these local stations is not so much that they're going to give you constant saturation of conservative content like you would get if you watched Fox News. Bill O'Reilly, Sean Hannity were no longer Bill O'Reilly, but it's the fact that they're able to control the conversation in general. And this merger or this buyout means that these local stations no longer have the freedom or as much freedom to focus on local issues as much as they are going to be fed from a centralized location, national narratives. And think about the conglomerates that bought up local newspapers. Now you have newspaper outlets that once employed 40 or 50 people, now only have about 5 or 6 people who all they do is they get the stories from national outlets and they recycle them, package them up, and put them in a local paper. This has the ability of controlling the national narrative like nothing else that we've seen because they control the Overton window. There's only so much that's going to be talked about. There's only so many things that are even possible in the conversation. And this is exactly what's happening with the Sinclair Group buying up Tribune Media. This really speaks to the fact that media and corporations, we're coming full circle in American history. We're coming full circle because there was a time in American history where large corporations owned the majority of our media, owned the majority of banks. We've seen this, this is not new. The only thing that's new about it is that these organizations now have a digital reach that dwarfs anything that someone like Hearst could have imagined when he had access to all of the media outlets that he had access to. This is the culmination of a slow shift back to the world where we have a handful of corporations that own and control the entirety of our media, of our news, of our journalistic media. 1983, 90% of the media was controlled by 50 companies. Just keep that in mind. In 1983, 90% of media was controlled by 50 companies. Today, 90% is controlled by just 5 companies. Look at the flip. Look at how we've come from 90% being owned by 50, which is, I would argue that is problematic. But where we are now is a far cry from 50 companies. We only have 5 companies that control 90% of our media: Comcast, Disney, News Corp, Time Warner, CBS, Viacom. We're coming back full circle to a time where you have to go to the monopolies. We not even, how can I say this? We're not even coming back. We're there. We're there in the most spectacular fashion, where we have allowed the amalgamation of wealth, of media outlets, of banks, of airlines, such that we have a handful of organizations that controls 90% of our access to media. This is where we are, and this is where we've been moving slowly but surely since Ronald Reagan, right? Ronald Reagan, the Fairness Doctrine was moved in 1987. Skip ahead a few years, Bill Clinton, the Telecommunications Act of 1996, where the maximum amount of radio stations that could be owned by any organization was 40. And as soon as the Telecommunications Act of 1996 was passed, overnight, you had Clear Channel went to 1,200 stations practically overnight. And this has the ability of controlling the entire range of our conversation. This is why Clear Channel owns almost every radio station that you cut on. You will not hear progressive commentary. The only progressive commentary that was left on Clear Channel was Randy Rhodes. And now she's not even on the radio. She's in the blogosphere, in Twitter sphere. She's podcasting now. And so once we have the situation, and before I finish that thought, let me backtrack. This was not just brought to you by Republicans. This was brought to you by Democrats. This was brought to you by everyone who benefits from having a small amount of elite controlling the media narrative, controlling other businesses, controlling television, controlling radio, controlling the airlines. This is brought to us by everyone who buys into this economic framework. And now we've come full circle with Sinclair Media gobbling up 200 stations. They still won't be the biggest fish in the pond, but they are moving closer and closer and closer. And in this case, they have a conservative agenda, they have a conservative lean, and they have no qualm about running with it. And so we're going to see a quick shift on local radio, local television rather, where more and more stations, 200 more stations, are now going to be forwarding the conservative agenda of Sinclair Media that during this election had direct talks with Jared Kushner, son-in-law of President Trump, and provided favorable coverage for Donald Trump.